Some parts in the world may revert to white death, but we just like to call her Shirayuki. But it doesn't mean that it's any less deadly.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another deck profile on the channel, and this time we're gonna cover one of the last deck profiles concerning Violence Deleter, and it's been a little bit late as the Runa set already dropped last week, and the upcoming Light of Salvation, Logic of Destruction is coming this week, and we still need to cover everything about the Bermuda and that set, and there's still a lot going on, so let's just dive into this Shirayuki deck profile, as it's a very interesting new deck archetype for Murakumo, as it allows for some more defensive kind of interactions during your opponents, with the whole minusing their opponent's attack power during your turn or during their turn. And most of you are probably already familiar with the mixing of this archetype with other builds like the Zanbaku build or the Mandala Lord build. But this deck profile is going to take a different approach, as we're going to try looking at a completely focus around the power of Shirayuki and get the most benefit out of that playstyle. And with the knowledge of this deck profile, you can look at mixing this archetype with different strategies, as you know at least what the maximum capabilities are of Shirayuki, instead of only seeing one particular side of her strong points and not seeing the others. So without further ado, let's jump right into the deck profile, as there are some interesting things to cover and might be a new point of view of how you could use her. For this Murakumo deck list, we run a total of 9 grade 3s, 12 grade 2s, 12 grade 1s, and 17 grade 0s. For a grade 3 lineup, we run of course 4 copies of Fantasy Petal Storm Shirayuki. This is our main card that allows for our most defensive plays, as well as some very strong offensive play when we time her skill in the right conditions. We also run 3 copies of Twin of Swords MUSASHI. This is basically a very strong attacker and aggressive card that allows for a lot of cards being thrown to defend against it. And lastly, we run 2 copies of Fiend Morote Surveillant, as this card allows us to get some key pieces to our hand when we are in the late game stages, and they are forced to either take the damage or giving us a +1. For the grade 2s, we run 4 copies of Fiend Jakotsu Girl. This is the main grade 2 supporter card for Shirayuki. Not only does it allow us to fetch it to our hand in the early game, it also allows us to soul charge cards in the late game. And overall, both conditions are very good in combination with Shirayuki, and it's a great card for all kinds of situations. We also run 4 copies of Switch Archer FUSHIMI. We all know about this card. It's a good strong attacker on its own, as it can get some good numbers on the Accel circle. And the effect that we can attack a back row unit is also very handy in the type when we either want to deal with a pesky back row unit, or when they got a defensive trigger, we at least have another target that we can attack. And lastly, we run 4 copies of Stealth Beast White Mane. And this can be a very odd choice, as it's a 7k grade 2, but its skill allows for a very strong late game. And as you're gonna see, this deck excels in getting to the late game. And then in those scenarios, this unit can become very powerful on its own. For the grade 1s, we of course run 4 copies of Stealth Fiend Rainy Madame, the grade 1 support card for Shirayuki. Just like Jakotsu Girl, this card allows us for more consistency on our Shirayuki turn, as it fills the soul, as well as getting more Shirayukis to hand from the drop zone to keep our loop basically going for a long time. We also run 4 copies of Stealth Beam Metamorfox. It's basically the support card for White Mane in this deck, but as you probably already know, Metamorfox can do a lot more than that, but that's basically its main focus in this build. And lastly, we run 4 copies of Cornered Stealth Rogue Benijishi. It's a great card for more consistent push during basically any time in the game when we have it on the field, as it can activate whenever we want, and it synergizes really well with Shirayuki in the way that the grade 2s and grade 1s put more of the copies into the drop zone and we can call it out immediately. And it's just a great card for more offensive plays, especially against Protect lands. And for the grade 0s, we run of course the obvious starter, and for the trigger lineup, we run 4 heals, 8 crits, and 4 draw RPGs, making a total of 9 grade 3s, 12 grade 2s, 12 grade 1s, and 17 grade 0s. This Murakumo deck doesn't have a pronounced combo play or anything of that sort. It's all about stalling the game for as long as possible, all the while you keep crippling them with cards like MUSASHI, FUSHIMI and White Mane. And when you find an opening, you come in with some powerful attacks of 1 or 2 White Manes supported by MUSASHI with potentially a power reduction active of Shirayuki. The stall cycle that basically is the main core about this deck works as follows. You ride a Shirayuki as your Vanguard and call 2 Jakotsu girls to the rearguard circle. If your opponent is sitting at 5 damage, you can call them to the Accel circles or call boosters because they will not hit, otherwise you will win the game. What will happen is at some point you will have drawn all your Shirayukis, so you will always soul charge 2 cards from your Jakotsu girls. And you will get a free Shirayuki from your drop zone, either from your Vanguard skill or from a Rainy Madame. The next turn you will guard with the Shirayuki, minus 3 units with 10k, and thanks to that you can probably survive that turn with ease. And next turn you ride a new Shirayuki from hand and keep the cycle going. This can go on for quite some turns, and all the while you're generating more and more Accel circles. As you might have noticed, not a lot of cards use any form of resources, and that's because everything will go to fuel Shirayuki's stall tactic. Shirayuki will be the only one to use a soul, and Morote Surveillant is the only one that will use Counterblast. Jakotsu Girl and Rainy Madame are both great cards to not only fetch your Shirayukis, but also to fill the soul. Together with rewriting Shirayukis, you can generate a lot of soul. And with that we know our other vital resource, and that is cards in decks or drop zone, as seen as we can fetch cards from those 2 specific zones. And thanks to Benijishi, we can even put more cards back into our deck, like vital cards like Metamorfox and Shirayuki. But cards like Rainy Madame and Jakotsu Girls are also good options to reveal them into your deck. But we will come back to that, why this is the case, in a bit. Now that we know the basics about the build, let me showcase different strategies while approaching this deck. We already know about the infinite stall loop with the 3 Shirayuki cards, but besides just stalling, this deck has also some very aggressive plays. First off, White Mane. This card becomes stronger and stronger all the longer the game progresses, and you might think this card's power is kept at 22 or 32k on an Accel circle, right? Well, you can actually let it grow all the way up to 52k if you want, all the thanks to Metamorfox, because he can be called as a White Mane, to making the other White Manes stronger for that single turn. You can also choose to call all Metamorfox in a single turn for a big swing push, or spread them out for multiple turns to generate consistent pressure. Another aggressive play and a way to force your not on hit effects to not hit while your opponent is sitting on low damage is putting the crits on cards like Jakotsu Girl, because they are now forced to give you some form of setup / resources, or they need to take 2 damage. And if you have a Rainy Madame on the field, that will make it even harder to decide what they want to allow to happen. Most of Shirayuki's skill will be used in defense, but you can make a very powerful attack with such a skill, because if you lower them to 2 to 3k power and you have access to some Benijishis, you can unleash some mayhem, called Snow Dance White out. The only thing you need is 3 Shirayukis in your drop zones and 3 Benijishis on the field. You can get them in your soul even by soul blasting 2 Shirayukis when you ride the third one and uses the on play skill. By this time you have at least 3 Accel markers, you call full field, this can be some White Manes or Musashis, and you attack with everything and leave 1 or 2 units standing just in case. When you attack with the Vanguard and they perfect guard it, well, then you can activate Benijishi's skill, you put the Shirayuki back to the deck and call it immediately to the Accel circle. Then you proceed to do this 3 times, and for free you basically generated 3 new 22k versus 2 to 3k attacks on the field. If you want, and you have soul for it, you might minus the Vanguard even more. The reason why you want to leave at least 1 rearguard standing is the fact that you don't know if they will perfect guard your Vanguard or not, and you want to have a unit ready to get the potential trigger power, so you still have some use from it. This combo is highly effective against Protect clans, and especially in combination with Musashi, as soon as they don't want to waste the perfect guard against such a unit when your Vanguard still needs to attack. Benijishi and Morote Surveillant are in the deck to also increase consistency, as they can fetch key pieces to hand. Morote Surveillant can fetch anything, it's a great card to get your Shirayuki support cards or White Manes, and Benijishi is a great tool to generate consistent pressure, as it allows for free multi-tacking, and in combination of the Shirayuki cards it works really well, as soon as those cards recycle themselves really effectively. Usually this is the moment where I go over the alternative options, but as soon as how splashable these cards are in any kind of strategy, this part can basically contain all other Murakumo cards. But if you want to stick with the same stall-like strategy, the only thing you could replace is maybe Benijishi for something else like the 9k Vanilla or a Shakurok. And FUSHIMI could be replaced by the 12k Vanilla or Midoro Pyro. And of course, you could experiment with other grade 3 supports like Mandala Lord. The new Shirayuki cards allows us to play a different kind of strategy that isn't effective by our opponent denying us counterblast. Although Shirayuki is more known as an engine splashed in another deck, she as a standalone build isn't something to laugh at, and with the flexibility of good defense as well as strong offense, makes it a build to not be underestimated. And with that we conclude our Shirayuki deck profile. As you've seen, it's a very interesting approach to these cards, as we're used to putting it into something else like a Mandala Lord build or a Zambaku build, but if we basically play on our own strength, it is a different kind of build, as it's more about the stall tactic and then come in with a big swing turn when your opponent isn't expecting, when they suddenly go -10, -15 or -20, depending on how many skills you suddenly chain. And that can be very deadly. As I said before in the video, there's still a lot of things we need to talk about. The Bermuda set, as well as the other cards about the Light of Salvation, Logical Destruction, the set reviews and deck profiles. But before we're gonna go into them, there is still one more video about Violence Deleted that I want to bring out, and that's a combined deck profile about the Golden Beast Tamer update build and the Zambaku Zangeki Shirayuki hybrid build, as a lot of people ask about it. I'm going to put them in one video, as they are not really that new in consideration to their previous builds. Only 1, 2 or 3 different cards, and that's about it. So that will probably be the day after this one, depending if Bushiroad is not releasing a shitload of new cards again like they did last week. But with that said, I want to know what you guys think of this deck profile in the comments down below. What do you think about the Shirayuki cards in general? Do you like the way that they are functioning? Is this approach of a Shirayuki standalone build something that piques your interest? I'm just curious to know what you guys think about these cards. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters over at Patreon, Priest and John Edmondson, for supporting me in doing basically this for you guys. It makes a big difference. And if you too want to support me and get also exclusive access to exclusive content, then head over to patreon.com/Vanguard Insider and become a patron today. But that's all for me today. I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one.